you have a couple of strikes against you in sort of being in the conservative category. You are young and you are female, which means that you can neither be young nor female if you are conservative. So how did you end up as a young female conservative? What shaped your values?
Yeah, well, my parents, definitely. I don't have an interesting political story in that I don't have any kind of like about face at which point I said, okay, I once believed that or I once thought that and I don't anymore, and here's what's changed my mind. I kind of wish I had that story. I think it's interesting when people do. I just don't. My parents were poor growing up. They really came from nothing, and they were poor when they got married at 19 and 20, and they made really good choices in their lives to make sure that my brothers and me had a better life than they did. And when I was young, they talked to me a lot about entrepreneurship. They talked to me a lot about the joy of being your own boss and being able to be independent. They always told me, you can do whatever you want to do. Whatever dream you have, if you put your mind to it, you can do it. And so they never talked to me about politics per se. I mean, I knew that we were Republicans. I knew that we liked George W. Bush. I remember all that. But they never sat me down and said, you know, here's why we're conservative or here's why we're Republicans. It was really just the values of individual liberty, of entrepreneurship that I liked. And I never had a moment where I was like, you know what? More government control actually sounds kind of good. Or like maybe I don't feel like human beings have this great potential that they can reach on their own. I never had that. And so it was really the values that my parents instilled in me growing up. And of course, being raised in a Christian home, I think has a lot to do with that as well. And so I really can say I've always been a conservative, but probably didn't really understand why and what that meant until I was in college.
And how did you define yourself as a conservative in college? You say sort of made yourself aware of what your actual principles were. What were the sort of key components of your self-education?
Well, I think that my faith has always kind of undergirded everything that I believe politically, and I think that starts with the dignity of the human being. That's why I believe in the Constitution. That's why I believe in how our country was founded. And I think those things being pushed against in college is what made me realize, wow, not everyone believes the things I do. Because I grew up in the Bible Belt in Dallas, and I went to a Christian school, kindergarten through 12th grade. Then I went to college in South Carolina, which is not a very liberal state, but went to a liberal arts college where a lot of the professors probably leaned to the left and took a lot of religion classes, a lot of rhetoric classes, and a lot of constitutional law classes. And I realized, okay, what I believe about the Constitution, what I believe about individual liberty and small government is not something that everyone believes. But I was lucky. I don't know if it was just because I went to a good school that had a lot of good professors, or if it was just before all the craziness happened. But I had an amazing professor who was a liberal. She taught African American rhetoric, which was one of my favorite classes. And she loved Barack Obama, and she knew I was voting for Mitt Romney. But we had a lot of conversations in her office about the differences that we had, that she was a Christian, I was a Christian. She was pro-choice, I was pro-life. And we could sit down and have conversations. I was one of her favorite students. She still talks to me. She was one of my favorite professors. I never felt ostracized in her class. I never felt, really in any of my classes, maybe I was just ignorant, but I never felt like, oh, I can't believe this, or I can't talk about this. I always felt like there was an environment in which I could discuss and debate these things. And I would say that Dr. King, while I was in school, really helped me hone what I really believed. It was the pushing against and the debating that helped me, I think, make it my own.